morning. My name is Rob Douglas. I'm the founder, chairman, and CEO of BioConnect. And it's really a privilege and a delight to have you part of our launch event today. And this has everything to do with providing content and insights about how the world of security will look post-COVID. Our objective for today, we've got 6 sessions through the day. They're half an hour each, and then there's some Q&A time at the end of them. So you're welcome to join any and all of the 6 that are scheduled for today. But our primary objective is to give you insight, to provide knowledge of what we have learned to help you as you prepare for the world of physical access post-COVID. Many call it the new normal, and I think that's probably a great descriptor. And so I look forward to just sharing the insights that we've learned. And the way I'm intending to do that is to really look at what are the lessons that we can learn from the post-pandemic world at the beginning. So let's just look at what will the world look like post-pandemic, and then from that, what can we learn from that as it relates to the world of physical access and what those behavior changes will be and what those new security requirements are going to look like post-COVID. So the first part of my presentation is really to talk about, let's just forget about security. Let's just talk about post-pandemic. What is the world going to look like? And then second is that I'd like to introduce 10 lessons that we have learned about what the post-pandemic physical security world is going to look like. And I'll go through each one of them through the lens of what this will look like and provide some ideas of how each of us can be able to solve the top 10 lessons that we've learned. So firstly, let's start with, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic now. What can we learn about what this future will look like? Well, let's start with the Spanish flu. We've all been hearing about it. Over 100 years ago, we went through a very significant pandemic. And what can we learn from that as it relates to COVID for us to know? We actually suffered 50 million deaths. And the historians will say that there has very little evidence of people's work or social patterns changing after the outbreak was over. In fact, the first US president after the pandemic campaigned on returning to normalcy. And it looks like, based on history, that in fact, that's what happened. In the 1920s, people went back to their work, they went back to their personal lives. And I think the historian's view is the reason why that happened is there was no alternative. This was returning back to the new normal was, in fact, the best outcome for that time period. So let's talk about now. Excuse me. Let's look at COVID-19. Let's look at the year 2020 through the lens of 100 years ago to now. The difference is that over the last several decades, we have really witnessed the rise of the digital everything. And as a result of that, as we consider our lives post-COVID, we don't need to pack into trains. We don't need to sit in traffic or in commuter distances in order to get to the office. In fact, when you look at the digital transformation, it's way more than just Zoom. It's way more than teleconferencing and email and social media and other digital platforms. What has happened for us in this pandemic is today, life can be lived digitally. And this is a profound difference of the last pandemic to this one. And I'd like to speak further about that. So, living a digital life. Well, this actually has been, as I said, has been going on for a couple of decades. But in 2011, Mark Andreessen made the declaration that software is eating the world. And his basic comment at that time was that everything physical in the world is going to be added to or replaced by software. And so there are many out there who say that by about the year 2018, that we've finally hit the stage where the majority of the world's population is connected to the digital world in some way, mostly because of the advent of the mobile device. So when you look at the world is mostly now digitally connected, the part that has prevented us from fully living a digital life is human attitudes. We've historically not been willing to fully cross over to the digital life. And COVID-19 has been the great accelerator to obviate this particular obstacle to make this digital future now possible. So the pandemic that we are in right now is a forcing function. It's like the world's greatest experiment of technology all done and tested at once. So the world, probably in the course of a week or two, was forced to move into remote locations and light up everything digital in order to be able to run our societies. And for the most part, the digital tools have passed. So we've actually proven to ourselves we can actually lead a digital life. So what else can we learn about the post-pandemic world? Let's just talk about what the future of what cities might look like. And in this definition of cities, it's any population of 1 million or more people. Aristotle, in the year 350 BC, made the declaration that humans are in fact social animals. The social fabric of our humanity is a key part of who we are, in fact, even drives our health. And so if you look at cities over the course of time, of 1 million more people, in the 1800, we had 2 cities. By the time we hit the year 2000, we had 371 cities. In the next, really now, in the next 10 years, we're going to be up to 700 cities around the world of more than 1 million people. Most of the expansion of these new cities are going to come in developing countries. Pretty much the forecasts is that in the developed world, the major urban centers have now been established, and they'll just continue to build, and some of them will become megacities that will exceed 10 million people. The other thing that we've learned about the advent of cities and the collection of people and this social fabric that we all seem to desire is that it's been documented that Americans are 50% more productive living in a modern city than in a rural environment. In fact, when we all look at this digital experiment we just went through in March, we all think, well, I guess we all just can be rural or suburban for the rest of our lives and just operate our lives. And this certainly, the digital transformation of COVID-19 has now made that possible. But it is also, these technologies have now introduced even better ways that we can live in cities as it relates to things like ride sharing and meals delivery on demand. So it's actually a technological digital life is now becoming very easy to live in city environments today. In fact, if you actually, as I've been researching both through podcasts and through reading of various perspectives of the future of the city, there's this notion of the 15-minute city. The basic idea of these large city populations where you can live in a part of a city and within a 15-minute radius can have access to all aspects of the amenities of life that you're seeking. This idea of a 15-minute city, it's like sub-cities or sub-communities living in large centers. In fact, we've seen evidence of where that happens. In fact, even where I live today, I'm an example of somebody who lives in that 15-minute city notion. But what it means is that brings on more bikes, more walking, and fewer vehicles in order to be able to live a city life. So why did I spend time talking about that? Is that in the post-pandemic world, we're all not going to live remote. There certainly is the case that we will do that, but because we are social animals by nature in our own DNA, the advent and the continued blossoming of city environments are going to persist and flourish, and that affects physical access security. So what's the future of work? Now, if I may just do a sound check, just to make sure you can all hear me. Christina, could you just confirm that my sound is coming in clear?
Sound is great.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a couple of insights I'd like to share about the future of work, and then we'll talk about what it means to the future of physical security. Just a moment, I see a question has just come in. Okay, thank you. So the future of work. What is this going to look like for all of us? Well, the future of work is that we can all see great evidence where digital companies are, employees are going to be working at home. They're going to be doing a lot of their day-to-day work remotely, and they'll come to the office either on a schedule or ad hoc in order to conduct meetings, presentations, and brainstorming sessions. We also can see that organizations that are very much living in the physical organizational world are likely to return to pre-COVID work models. So the bricks and mortar that we're used to pre-COVID is likely going to exist post-COVID, in particular for companies that are more in the physical realm, not in the digital realm. What else do we see? We're going to see examples where you can see examples now where countries are looking at doing 4-day work weeks or flexible work hours. So this notion of 9 to 5 is being replaced by a very flexible work environment, both remotely as well as in central locations. In fact, when you think of teleconferencing like Zoom, which has become a staple for all of us, even including this presentation, the thing about it that we've already learned and researchers are reporting on is that Zoom, through the lens of our social humanity, is actually spending our social capital. It's not building it. And in fact, to build our social capital, it does require direct human interaction. What else have we learned about the future of work? The other aspect is that bringing on new workers is more challenging in a completely remote environment, as it's difficult for those new onboarded employees to onboard. It's also difficult for them to really experience the culture and build teamwork. In fact, I'll give you a real example of this. Is several years ago, before COVID actually entered our lives, IBM had a very conscious program where work from home was very much part of the fabric of the culture. And they actually came to the decision to actually move away from work and home environments, primarily because of issues like this. How do we onboard new people? How do we continue to manifest the culture? How do we continue to collaborate? So when you think about the future of work, both in the digital world and I think in some cases in the physical organizations, this technology of the digital life is definitely going to transform and give the opportunity for a hybrid work environment, working remote and working in common locations together. The other aspect of work from home that I'll just comment about is that it's said that humans create companies and companies create humans, and these are two sides of the same coin. That in fact, the fabric of a company is built based on the culture, which is built on the social fabric of how people interact with each other. And the best way to be able to build that is by the in-person human connection. So even in the cases of large-scale calamities like the one we're going through, the need for participation, collaboration, and competition is ever present in the social fabric of who we are as people. And COVID-19 is going to be no shortcut for this hard wiring that lives inside of us. It will be an enabler, but it's not going to replace the core DNA of who we are. So, in fact, we may see some evidence that we've been living sort of in this COVID environment, working remote for so long. We may actually see the opposite effect occur as well, where we see humans are actually looking to get away from this total remoteness in favor of feeding their social aspect of humanity. So what does all of this mean? So if we think about the world in the post-COVID environment, we're going to be living digital lives, which we're doing now. We're going to have even more evidence of software eating the world, which means the complete digital life of companies and organizations is only going to accelerate. And we're going to have work environments where it's going to be hybrid or distributed, where people are going to be working remotely and locally. And so there'll be an ad hoc nature to it, replacing sort of the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday sort of mentality. So what would be the 10 lessons that we can learn from this as it relates to physical access control? Anybody got any suggestions? If you do, you're welcome to say them in the chat. Oh, we do have a question. What do I see as what do I see as the biggest challenges for enterprises post-COVID? Well, in fact, if it's okay for the person who just asked that question, these 10 areas that I'm going to describe to me represent the 10 challenges that are out in front of us for the enterprise. So at the end of it, I'll summarize all 10. but this to me represents how we have to think about physical security in the post-COVID world. So the first one, this may surprise you. It may make total sense for you, but the first challenge in the post-COVID world is protecting the physical access to our digital infrastructure. You see, COVID-19 has just put the digitization of our society into warp drive. In fact, it's just moved us all into warp drive. So if you think of just from a physical access point of view, what do I need to do in order to further protect the storage, the processing, and the transmission of data, both inside my company and now also all of the third-party service providers or cloud providers or co-location facilities that I might be using, or telecommunication companies. So I've got a combination of internal infrastructure of digital I have to protect, and also how do I protect it when I'm using third parties. So this is really a new frontier of what we're going to be dealing with. Now, why is this important? Well, the digital highway or the digital communications infrastructure of every organization has just taken on a whole new meaning in importance, both to prevent breaches, preventing people getting physical access to data in its storage or transmission, and also the need for compliance. So as third parties are the whole cloud-based and data center co-location market has exploded. We're now relying on third parties in order to be able to manage and move and manipulate our data that's core to our business. As a result of that, the need for compliance and auditability is going through the roof. If you're ever familiar with what used to be called the SAS 70 reporting, which then got repurposed into the SOC 2, these are actual now compliance obligations that any service provider must comply with, where they're audited by large firms like KPMG, Deloitte, and others to demonstrate that they have the controls and the auditability of customer data moving through their premises on behalf of the customers they serve. So you've got the protection of breaches, but you also have the auditability that's really coming to the forefront. So here's just an example of that. If you think of just the storage of data, processing of data, and then the transmission of data, on the bottom here, this gray line represents the probability risks associated with self-hosting of these three aspects of the movement of your data infrastructure. And the orange or light orange, yellow color is when you move to third parties, the actual risk profile, although the third parties are more professional likely to be able to manage it, the risk profile to you as the enterprise actually increases. And how are you going to ensure compliance and auditability of those third parties? So, and the red line represents this idea of a cost of a breach. So a breach that happens at the data storage side will cost you way more to reputational risk or organizational or even value of your company if in fact a breach is publicly reported, and on right through to transmission. So the cost of the breach varies depending on where you are in the supply of data. So in short, the physical access and chief information security officer type roles, these roles are going to be putting more emphasis on the physical protection of all of their data infrastructure in order to protect against threat and being able to be in compliance with these obligations that continue to accelerate. The second area in meeting the challenge is, well, I'm sure this one's of no surprise to any of you, managing the threats. Managing threats and uncertainty more easily. Have you ever experienced in your life a point in your life where there is more uncertainty around you, both professionally and personally? Have you ever? Historically, we're at an all-time high of having to absorb and make decisions around physical security in this uncertain world that we're in. And likewise, even equally importantly, is the threat landscape is changing, and it's changing rapidly. We've grown up in physical access where you pick an authentication method for your door, like a card reader or a biometric. You mount it on the wall, you bring wiring to it, you connect it up to your panel and your access control system, and now it sits at the door for 6 to 10 years. The same authentication method is now hard-coded to your door system. In fact, a term that I've often heard is that physical access security moves at the speed of a building. It doesn't move. Once it gets installed, it's not changing. And so how do you reconcile that in a post-COVID world where the threat model and the threat landscape is changing continuously, and you've got to have different authentication tools that you need to be able to deploy at your perimeter or inside the sensitive areas within your enterprise? You need more flexibility. An example of that flexibility is this basic idea is I need to be able to have a range of authentication based on the security risk that I'm experiencing. So I could be as low as using a multi-class, card read to get into a room. What about now wellness? Like wellness has now become a thing. And in fact, confirming your health before you're given the right to enter a facility is now part of the security protocol. So how do I bring that authentication into the decision if I'm going to unlock the door? Or I want to use biometrics for even higher security. Or I want to actually move to now biometrics on mobile device. Or I want to use third-party mobile authenticators like using Duo Security. Duo Security is the market leader in multi-factor authentication on the digital side of the enterprise. What happens if I want to use that now at the door? Or even further, I want a two-man rule or a two-person rule that two people have to authenticate before I'm going to unlock this very sensitive door that might be getting access to data infrastructure. The point is, the second area of challenge is you've got to be able to come up with answers on how you are going to give flexibility into the authentication landscape to accommodate the ever certain and changing world around us. The third area is identity as the new security perimeter. And what I'd like to just focus on for a moment is if you think in the past, the way we think about access control is, let's just imagine you get into a building that has got multiple tenants in it. You walk into the building, it's during a business day. It might be from 8 to 6. You come into the building, you walk up to the information area. You ask for directions on how to get to this particular area. So you have free access to the facility. And then you face, access control events based on the areas you're going to. That's going to change. We're going to move from that idea that I just described, which is really this yellow in the middle, where security and authentication is going to be pushed out. In fact, it's going to be pushed out right to your home. How about we start the authentication process before you even leave your house to go to a facility or your condo? So we can see in the change where as we've got to get higher levels of certainty of your wellness before we'll even let you into the facility, we may want you to actually even begin the authentication process from the comforts of your own home or on your way to the office. In fact, and then if we haven't done that, for sure, we're going to want to actually complete the authentication of whether we're going to grant you access right at the sidewalk. It's no longer about inside the facility. So the rings, I've just visualized it here, the rings of authentication are going to be pushed out in order to get better certainty of the authentication of the person before they get to the core area that they're seeking to get involved in. The fourth area in the post pandemic era for physical access. Well, sure, we all know about the importance of security, both cybersecurity and physical security, critically important to our building infrastructures globally. That's going to continue to be an important priority. Scalability is going to grow as we move more and more digital. We've got to be able to have the ability to have high security environments around the planet. But the two I really want to draw attention to is privacy and safety. Okay, so let's start with safety. So I just mentioned it. So safety is now part of the security protocol of authentication for a user. That's never really been that way before, except for maybe the most sensitive medical facilities. But safety is now part of the mosaic of authentication before I'm going to grant you access. The other one is privacy. So we have examples, if you just look at my screen here, we have examples where states across the US are putting more and higher governance around, well, who can actually have access to your biometric information or your behavioral information or your video surveillance information? Like, who can actually have access to that? And the privacy being retained to the employee or to the individual is really what's driving this. Similarly, GDPR, which is something that came out a couple of years ago in Europe, this all centers around putting a privacy shield in the data or in the digital world for people, for humans. In fact, recently, the US actually was just pulled out of this particular compliance because it's not complying with the core aspects of GDPR. So this idea of individual privacy has grown and is going to continue to grow in the landscape of how we think about physical access. Now, the interesting thing is something I've dreamt about for a long time. I've dreamt about it. We've talked about it. It's really fun to see us actually do it. So we can actually create, I'm giving you a small sidebar, BioConnect. We can now, a user can actually enroll their biometrics on their phone. The bond of the biometric information to the enterprise can be established. The user can have complete control. It never leaves their phone. And the user has total control of actually at any moment wiping out or no longer using their biometric information. The user is now in complete control of the biometric lifecycle. And this is like a big step forward towards building privacy into security. The fifth area, AI and automation. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to any of you. I just received another question coming in. So the fifth area is AI and automation. So I want to refer specifically to automation. We can see examples now where we see a lot of examples actually where customers who are actually asking us for please automate more of the security credentialing process so that I can actually move my high valued humans into higher value security areas. So we see examples where people are looking for footprinting technology or now even door tracing technology and occupancy management. So you see, buildings historically have been built and organized on the basis that they're 100% occupied. And now we're going to be in a world where people are going to be very flexible with their use of facilities. So as a result of that, I need more intelligence about actually who and how many and when are actually using the facility. So that, for example, if I've got inside of the building, if I have food service food courts, or I've got other amenities like getting haircuts, I've got amenities inside these facilities. These entities need to know what the occupancy forecasts look like to make sure they have sufficient food supply chain to accommodate the volume of people or the timing of when people are coming in. So occupancy management is going to become an important part of the physical access infrastructure to help us better use the facilities that we have. Number 6, well, it's no surprise, I'm sure, to any of us, this idea of a distributed workforce. Well, that's for sure. So here's just an example here of a quote that I just showed. So before COVID, 29%, this is the financial service industry, 29% had a stated objective that at least some portion of their workforce was working at home once a week. And now you can look, and that's grown dramatically. You're up to 70%. So we all can see that in the post-COVID world, this hybrid model will live. There will be examples where people will completely return back to the office environment, and in the digital type organizations, we'll see more of the hybrid. And so we've actually got to be thinking about physical access right from the home right through to the use of the individual facilities. Number 7, the dynamic workforce, I guess, is a little bit connected to the previous one, the dynamic nature of it. So this idea that the work day is no longer 9 to 5, it's no longer Monday to Friday, that in fact it is flexible based on demand or based on how we're going to sequence people moving through facilities or not. This idea of unification of your digital and your physical identity is going to become quite important. So if I'm really only coming into the office Tuesday and Thursdays, and on a Monday I'm trying to get access, I'm in the office and I'm trying to get access to digital applications, and I've not authenticated to get into the building, should I be allowed to get access? Should there not be a connection between when have I physically authenticated to be granted access to the secured location? That has to be established first before I can actually have access to the digital infrastructure inside. We see this unification that many talked about for probably 15, 20 years. This idea of logical and physical access is really where COVID-19 is now going to, I think, and we think is going to accelerate this idea of unification digitally and physically. Just one moment, please. Okay, so now this will, of course, will come as no surprise. So wellness. Is wellness and compliance going to be part of the security protocol during and post-COVID? We believe the answer is yes. And what really is happening here is we establish whether we're going to let you in or around a facility. It's always about who are you and confirming the trust in who you are. And that has now been added with how are you? So this idea of how your health is at any given time is being considered as part of the decision of whether we'll actually let you in, is now become a part of the authentication platform that people need to think about and also be able to report on. We have examples across states in the US and also in Canada where it's now mandatory that you have to provide daily reporting of the health and wellness of your employees, both remote and when they come into the office. So I'm going to show you an example of this here in a moment. I've got an example here at the bottom. This is an example where, during COVID, here's an example of an organization that has created a sign letting all tenants know you need to read all of these questions. Then you need to walk up to these security people where this plexiglass has been built, and you need to confirm human to human that I've read these questions and I'm negative to all of them. And then the security guard is going to visually decide whether to let you into the facility. So that is a very manual approach to managing this COVID change. So I'm going to show you 3 examples of how people can actually bring wellness and how you are into the decision of physical access authentication. So in my example it's a manual survey. In this case, it's visually, I'm looking at this sign, or I could be asked to fill in some paperwork. I've had to hire security people to be able to provide the human authentication of your wellness. In this particular application, there were 5 people hired to manage a 16-hour or 2-shift work schedule every day in order to confirm your wellness. So that's a pretty expensive thing to do, to have to hire that many people just to confirm your health before I'll let you into a facility. And then they're doing manual reporting. So the day after, they're getting manual reporting about any incidents or how people are doing. The next phase you could move into is you actually move it all digital. So if you see here on the screen, you're seeing a user actually just walking up to a card reader, like an HID card reader. They're getting a push notification to their mobile device to complete a survey of their wellness. And if they're authenticated approval, then a light will appear, and then the security guard knows that they've successfully declared their wellness and they have free access to the facility. So in this case, we've now automated some parts of it, but we are still using the security guard to actually do the sort of the final visual inspection before somebody gets in. And there's basic reporting. And oh, by the way, one thing that is good about this is you can actually do your wellness from home. So you literally could actually complete your wellness survey before you even leave your home to come to the office that day. The third area you could do is to completely automate the whole area. So back to one of my earlier comments about automation and physical security. This solution is really now a complete end-to-end automation. It's an automated declaration. It's now a virtual security guard, so you don't need anyone actually, you don't have to hire the 5 people to sort of visually authenticate people and whether they're well enough. And it's providing you real-time reporting and compliance to be able to show your daily reporting and incident reporting and alerting if anyone is actually failing. So in this case, this is full automation. You've now replaced the need to have the cost of all these extra people in order, because in this case, by the way, what I didn't mention is that the person, when they completed their wellness, it's actually tied right into physical access security. And if you fail your wellness declaration, you will not be granted access to the facility. An alert will be sent out to the authorities that you've pre-assigned to decide how we're going to interact with that person. Number 9, so the digital life. The digital life will require physical access control for offices and cities. You know, I'm sure there's been some of us that have wondered, okay, have we seen the final days of city environments? Have we seen the final days of office environments? And our belief in our study and what we're reading and learning about is that, in fact, the digital life is going to allow a lot more flexibility, but it's also going to enable the continued build out of office environments as well as cities. And what does that mean? Well, that means for physical access is that we've got to build more flexibility into our physical access solution environment, like a lot more flexibility. We have to build a lot more flexibility to deal with this transient nature of people coming and going. We have to build more flexibility into the threat and being able to adjust your authentication at the door systems based on the threats you're dealing with, and not live with technology that's going to be screwed onto your wall for 6 to 10 years. So there's multiple areas where we've got to be much more nimble with physical access to be able to accommodate the new normal post-COVID. And number 10, should come as no surprise to any of us, digital life is accelerating, and COVID-19 is even accelerating even faster this notion of the use of sharing, like the sharing economy, the transient use of facilities. We're going to find more and more examples where there's lots more smaller units of people using the same physical facility. And I think, for the most part, gone are the days where it's, one tenant in one location for an extended period of time. We're going to see a lot more examples of smaller units of people for smaller units of time using shared physical access facilities. And the physical access infrastructure of the future needs to be able to accommodate more effectively this type of an environment. And I'll give you an example of it. It's still true today. Like if you're a tenant, if you're a business as a tenancy inside a landlord building, often it's either you own the access control or the landlord owns it. What we really need to see is a shared world. We need to see a shared world where the individual tenant and the landlord can share ownership of the access of the premises that I may be occupying. And so by being able to increase the human trust, we'll be able to allow higher risk transactions to occur in this dynamic world that we're referring to. So in summary, I really have chosen not to get into the details of what BioConnect can do to help you. I really wanted to make this session really more in the spirit of what can we learn about past pandemic, what can we learn about what we're witnessing today, and how that'll affect the future of physical access. These 10 represent the top 10 challenges that we see as it relates to the authentication layer of the physical access world. All of them can be solved. Certainly, BioConnect as a company has capability that can add value to all 10 of these areas. But the most important thing, if you learned only one thing from this collaboration, you can't do it by point-to-point solutions. It's not going to be possible. I really believe that for us to be able to, as a community, to deal with the uncertainty and the change that we're confronting now and off into the future, platform solutions to the problems of physical security is the only answer. I think anytime any one of us chooses a point-to-point integration of a given solution, we have just hard-coded us and taken the flexibility out of our infrastructure to deal with the threats that are here now and the threats that will come, to be able to pivot and adjust to the future that is coming our way. So that's a summary. I'll leave you with this note. You actually here have access to my email. If any of you have further areas that you would like to follow up relative to the 10 challenges that we see for the enterprise, I'm delighted to respond back to you directly. And later this week, as we also are moving to be more of a digital company, as you'll come to the BioConnect Hub, which used to be our website, the BioConnect company is really spent the last 6 months really completely digitizing how we operate as well. We work with a partner, a very professional partner network around North America, and in some cases in countries around the world. And we continue to work with that community. And at the same time, we've significantly enhanced our digital presence to help you to be able to consume ideas, consume information, and consume technology in order to be able to help you deal with the environment that we're in today and prepare for the future for tomorrow. So I'm just going to check to see. Okay, there's another question, and I'm going to offer it up to, if any of you have any questions. That concludes the official part of the presentation I had planned for today. And I think Christina is going to open up the line, or you can just send Slack questions. But I see another one here, so let me just read this one. Can these wellness questions be customized by an enterprise or geographic location? Okay, so the answer is yes. So in this particular application that I just showed you, it actually does come from BioConnect. Those questions can all be customizable by you. And you can customize them for wellness applications, and more broadly, you can use them for anything. You can use them for compliance questions that you want to ask your employees, your third-party contractors, your visitors. In fact, we just had a Fortune 10 company probably about a month ago ask us if we could use those questions for getting consent from their tens of thousands of employees for consent to use their use biometrics within their platform. And the answer is yes. So you can use it as a compliance platform well beyond a wellness platform. Okay, well, I'm not sure if anyone has any further questions, but I'll ask Christina. Are there any other questions that you have seen come in, or how would you like us to proceed?
There's a question: how challenging is the implementation of the wellness declaration solution?
Okay, so if you think back to what I just showed you, I showed you 3 phases, and maybe I'll go back there. So phase 1, we all know what this one's like, right? Because we've all had to go through it, manually putting together a way that we can, confirm wellness or declare wellness as people are coming into facilities. This one is all digital. This is actually fairly straightforward. This is so on the challenge scale, I put this in the lower of the challenge scale because this is strictly a digital technology that can be released. Your employee population can go pull down bioconnect.com or BioConnect from the App Store. It can be integrated into they can be connected to our platform, and they can begin the survey. So it's actually fairly straightforward. I think the effort involved is more the change management aspect of it. So I think the technological lift is quite modest. There's the change management aspect, which is getting people used to using their mobile device for doing wellness declarations on a daily basis. So there's certainly some effort that needs to be put forward to be able to do that. And then the third one is if you want to go completely virtual with your guards and completely automate the process. This is actually now connecting BioConnect right into your access control system. So, which we do that today. So we are today, 80% of the top access control systems around the world are integrated into BioConnect. So for us to be able to light up this capability into access control systems is actually quite a straightforward thing to us, as we've been doing it now for the last 10 years. Are there any other questions that I could answer?
I think we're good there, Rob.
Okay, well, I'm going to thank you all for joining, and I will draw your attention to come see us if you'd like at our hub at bioconnect.com. Again, if you have questions to me directly, you're welcome to ask them. And I invite you at the top of each hour, right through till 3 o'clock. We've got individual content sessions where you're going to learn more about the technologies that we're releasing today. The biggest one I'd like to just make I guess, a commercial for is 5.0. So the BioConnect platform 5.0 is the most advanced, most scalable, secure, private, and safety-minded authentication platform that has ever come to market. And that's what we're announcing today. And you'll see some of the components that add into that. So if you are interested in this particular area, I'd encourage you to come join in today. So thanks very much. Stay healthy, and look forward to ways that we can help you along this journey.
For more information, visit our website at bioconnect.com.